jumping right in the game. And we are now live, my brother. This is it. Where's
We're
your heart?
here.
Black Lives Matter.
We've been talking about this for 2 weeks. Like,
I know, man.
it
It's
feels a
been
little
way too long.
anticlimactic.
It just feels good to actually be doing it, right? Just to
Yeah,
put it out there, make it happen, make it work. And it's a pleasure to be doing it with you, my brother.
and you as well, my friend. This is Torian. Yeah, yeah. I had 85 things to say right now. None of them are coming out of my mouth.
Listen, for as much talking and back and forth as we've been going, and just the things that we've been talking about, like it it feels good. It's like a sigh of relief to say, all right, let's just start. Let's just put it out there. You know?
Indeed,
Yeah,
indeed.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
yeah, yeah, man. Yeah, man.
So for our first episode, we talked about kind of sharing a little bit about how we met, because I think there's a story there, um, but I want to make sure that we're tight on that so that we get to the heart of the matter for the day. Um, do you want to kick that off?
Of course, I do. So how do we meet? So for the general public to know, so I was down in New Mexico, happened to be down in Albuquerque, visiting a really good friend of mine, who I actually need to update you on.
Oh,
Yeah, there's some things going on that when I spoke with her, she was like, hey, make sure you tell Royce that I have some challenges happening right now. But long story short, and a lot of people who may be listening, who may be watching, may not know that I practice jujitsu, or at least I attempt to practice jujitsu. as you know, we're at the very, very early infant stages of jujitsu. That's probably the best way to
true.
say it, right?
Yep.
And so I'm down there, and one of the things that was really adamant for me was to make sure that I was practicing, because since I've been the caregiver for my mom, and things have been really stressful, right? And so I went to the doctor.
Mm.
I think it was in early November, for a fact. And when I was at the doctor, the doctor was like, "Hey, listen, your blood pressure is extremely high. Like, it's higher than it should be, and you need to not only do something about it, but just to kind of get it regulated, we want to make sure that we put you on some type of medication." So I was on this medication, but that's why it was so important when I was down there to make sure I was rolling, because that was, jujitsu is a stress relief for me.
Yeah.
So when I'm talking to my friend, I'm like, listen, when I come down, I have to make sure that we get to Baja, so that I can actually practice rolling. And there's so many places, as you know, because you're there in Albuquerque. So I had a chance to rotate in a few places. Long story short, it was an early Sunday morning, which here in the Chicagoland area, we don't even have classes on a Sunday morning. So I was very grateful.
What?
Just no, we don't. No, I don't think it's enough people, at least not in this area. Not yet. Not yet. Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah.
sorry. Go.
Yeah.
Keep
Yeah.
going. But that's
But,
shocking to me because we've got two of our schools here in town in Albuquerque have Sunday morning classes.
well, and that's why I was so excited, because I was excited that I actually had the chance, or get the chance to practice or roll on a Sunday.
Yep.
So, as you know, long story short, we go to a Sunday morning class, and just for anybody who's listening, I'm like, half a stripe white belt. So
You had a couple of them on there, as I remember, because I remember seeing your because our belts were like about the same at the time,
yeah. I
and I
mean,
was like,
I have four stripes, but it certainly doesn't feel like it when I start rolling. I mean,
yeah,
because you're a practitioner, it's very difficult.
it, it's the lab.
Yeah, yeah. So anyway, so we're rolling, and so yeah, we were in class, and you and I spoke actually before class started, right?
Because we
And we
spoke
just
the Saturday.
yeah, because we had spoken before, but when we saw each other, it was like an immediate connection. It was really like our souls were happy to see each other again, right? I
Oh
think
yeah,
that's the best way to explain it, right? And it was
yep.
like an immediate synergy. And even my friend, she was like, wow, like I've never seen two people, particularly two men, just jump into a very heartfelt conversation so quickly. And I told her, I was like, yeah, I mean, this is, for me, I felt his energy immediately. And then as we started to put words around how we felt and the connection that we had outside of the mat, it was very obvious that we were kindred spirits and that we had a lot of alignment internally on where we were as human beings. So I mean, that's the very short version. I'm sure you have many more interesting details, but this all happened within a matter of minutes, and then our conversation was probably 45 minutes because we just jumped into things. But yeah,
Yeah.
it was quick. It was authentically quick.
Yeah. No, it's not real often I meet another man. I mean, there is something particularly odd for me about this,
Yeah.
that I meet another man and I know that I have to hug this human
Mm.
that quickly. Like that, does that, you know,
Oh,
like
absolutely.
that's,
Yeah.
and I'm a reasonably deconstructed guy around the notion of manliness and all that bullshit. But it's still like that's a thing. And it's a thing too that I've learned because like even when I feel that connection
Mm.
with somebody else, I've learned that there's so many rules around how we are as men
Mm.
that um, if I really want that connection with somebody, I often don't show it, right? Because I'm like,
Yeah.
I have to ease into this because I don't want to
Yeah.
scare this
Yeah.
potential awesome dude friend off.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, I mean, it teases out kind of the whole of like I think the what I loved about you immediately in meeting you, and like very quickly, oh, I'm a coach. Oh, you're a coach, and we just immediately, it's off and running, and cool. Now we have a professional excuse to like each other. Um, I shit you not, like that. I'm pretty sure it was what was happening, but but then immediately to also go into like how quickly we ended up in this space of, hey, so what do you do? And you spoke up first, and you're like, I'm all about vulnerability.
Mm.
And it just like
Mm.
everything just dropped right into my gut. And I remember looking at you and thinking, do you really fucking mean that? Like, do you know what that means to me? Do you have any idea what that means to me? And I didn't, I don't know. Well, so outside of a circle of probably, I guess it's probably maybe a dozen people now, I've not talked about the project that I've been launching
Mm.
and the book that I've been working on. Um, but like again, within 24 hours of meeting you and connecting and and you bringing this stuff up, I was like, yeah, I'm gonna tell you, I'm about killing the great white male. And I remember the look on your face. You're just like,
I'm like, what?
oh, dude. And I'm just like, yeah, well, all right. If you're about vulnerability, man, we got to talk because
Yeah. Yeah.
this is what this is.
Yeah.
I mean, for me, that's the heart of the work that I do around privilege. Vulnerability is a big. It's a center cornerstone.
Mm.
Okay, center corner. That's not words. It's a cornerstone for dismantling the system of privilege in this country.
Mm.
So I think yeah, there were so many connections on so many levels. Um, all right, so I got this one's been keeping me up at night.
Talk
You
to me.
call
What's
me
up?
brother. All right, so you call me brother so easily, and brother, like I use that term in a text with you, like right off the bat, and I was like,
Yeah.
dude, brother. And it's one of those that I have such a hard time saying, and I don't know what's there. I but it's
Why do you
like
have a hard time saying it? How do you feel when
I don't
you say it?
I it's part of it probably I've been thinking about it a lot. Part of it probably is just growing up that people that I called brother or bro, like it was often abbreviated to bro in circles where I grew up in California. And it had kind of a surfer connotation. And it always felt like to me, brother is a very intimate term. And like I
Mm.
don't want to throw it around. And yet I've seen also I'm starting to relate differently to men
Mm.
in middle age here and starting to have more intimate friendships with other men. And it starts to come up and I wrestle with it each time
Mm.
because and part of it probably is I mean my own brother is my relationship with him is not spectacular.
Mm.
He's differently abled on multiple levels. And I love this man deeply. Um, and what is that, so when I use the term brother, to me it really is like no, it's ride or die here. And
Right.
don't you fucking abuse that. That's like that, you know, like, so it's got like all this shit around it.
Yeah.
And yeah, so anyway, there you go. That's every
Well,
time we greet each other, that's, but all of this churns.
well,
You
so,
got something to
so
say?
well, I mean, the way that I use it, especially now at this point in my life, is more of a so even how we met, like I always want to show up as a generative person. And by
Yeah,
generative
yeah,
for me, what that means is I want to lead with the type of energy that hopefully I would like to receive back from the world, but at least that I want to give, right? And and so when I say brother, I really mean it. First of all, I've learned to trust my gut or my, my
yeah,
my heart, right? You know, since we got to hit the title of our show, "Where's Your Heart?"
yeah.
I've learned I've learned how to really trust my heart, and it doesn't mean my heart doesn't get broken or things don't happen or things of that nature. Um, but for me, it's very much a I want to lead with that, and I always want to approach people in a brotherly or a fraternal, if from a man's standpoint, fashion. And so that's what I want to lead with. Now, does it mean that that's always the nature of the relationship over time? No. I mean, I'm a nice guy.
Mm,
I'm probably one of the nicest guys in the world until I'm not, right? But part of my philosophy also is you have to prove to me that you suck as a human being. So I'm gonna project that out, and that's
and
part of my
call it forth.
vulnerability journey
Yeah, and call it forth from the other person. Like
for
that's part
sure.
of what
Yeah,
you're doing when you lead with that. You're calling it
yeah.
forth, and the connection to vulnerability there, like the fear of getting hurt, of being betrayed by people that I think of as brothers, like
Mm,
that is a vulnerability, and it's something. It's a choice, and it's I think one of my immediate connections to you being willing to lead so much with your heart that way. It it reminds me who I am, and
mm,
and calls that forth in me, and it reminds me that that vulnerability is a choice, and it's a courageous one, and
mm.
it's the most powerful thing that we can do. Calling somebody brother, even when they might hurt or disappoint us, really is an act of courage and vulnerability.
Yeah.
Because we don't do it knowing that the person isn't going to suck.
Well, and to me, it's no different than love, right? Like to me,
Yeah,
we should not love with the expectation that the person that we love is going to love us back. The true love would be, I'm going to be generative. I'm going to give regardless of your response. Now, it doesn't mean stay in anything that's abusive or be around people who don't appreciate you or respect you, right?
yep,
But it does mean I'm going to put things out, and I don't expect anything in return. And it can be hard at times, but it's been part of my process of just trying to show up in a way that is authentic to me. And honestly, I just feel better because, we talked a little bit in how we met in setting up our show, what got us to this point. And for me,
mm,
I grew up in an abusive home, um, violent, all different types of abuse, emotional abuse, psychological abuse.
mm,
And that really affected how I responded to things. I mean, to be quite candid with you, I was angry for a very long period in my life. And this was through middle school and high school and even through college. And, it's one of the reasons that I was at least halfway decent at sports. I can't say I did anything that was spectacular, but I was okay. But that fueled my purpose and my reason for doing it. And when I got into my professional career and I was in a work environment, one of the things that I realized was that it was hard for me to take feedback. And I took
oh,
everything
preach.
personally. No, seriously,
Yeah,
I took
yeah,
everything
no.
personally. And I was like, what's wrong with this person? And can't they see I'm doing this? And it was all about
Hmm.
my perspective and what I thought. And I got to a point to where professionally I was doing well. I was living in Florida. Uh, Money was great. I was in a good situation. Everything was seemingly perfect from a checklist standpoint, but internally I felt like super empty, and I wasn't happy. I just was not
Yeah,
happy. Not that I think that happiness is a constant state that anyone should have, um, but I certainly wasn't fulfilled. I wasn't purposeful. I wasn't satisfied,
yeah, yeah,
and that hit me really, really hard, man. So that's when I started to go into this more healing journey of why do I feel this way? Why
yep.
is it that I've checked all the boxes and I feel empty? Why is it that I have more money, at least at the time, that I ever thought I would have, especially with the background that I come from, that I felt the worst. And I felt like I didn't have an exchange of currency for the things that I wanted because I could buy things, but I
Yep.
still didn't feel good. Right. So, yeah, man, this started the journey a long, long time ago because we got some people chiming in. What's up, Jay Ferg? So yeah, it's that that really calibrated me, and it just took me along this journey that I'm still on, but I'm definitely in a different place than I was in, say, I don't know, 2005, 2010, or even
Mm,
2015, because as you know, as we've talked about, this is a continuous journey. This is something that we
yep.
continuously do and it never stops. But the recognition of how do I start to self-analyze and self-assess where I am, I think is very important, particularly from a masculine or a male standpoint, because it's something I don't
Oh
think we
yeah.
do enough of. I know we don't
No,
actually.
no. Vulnerability is a weakness as far like we literally use that term that way as men. That's what we're taught. Um, is he vulnerable in this area? Because we're going to attack that area. Like
Mm,
that's how we're conditioned, in
right,
this country at least.
right.
And that's part of the issue. It's so neat to hear too. I hadn't heard you phrase things exactly like that around the Florida thing. For me, that wake up moment was the day my son was born.
Mm,
Um, and like I was kind of pre-success, I guess. I'd gotten raises every 6 months in the company I was with. I was just like astronomical growth and all sorts of, like you said, checking a lot of boxes.
right.
Um, and he was born, and I had to look around and go, like, chest pains every day from stress. I'm smoking
Mm,
2 packs a day, going through a
mm,
6 pack every night.
mm,
Um, really messed up as a human being and locked in.
mm,
And that was, I saw the way, actually, it was because I saw the way my parents, who drove like, they, he was born at like 8:30 in the morning on a, oh, 8:10, 8:12 actually.
mm,
On a, I guess it was a Thursday morning. And my parents they were like, we'll come on the weekend. But then once he was born, they like drove 4 or 5 hours, however far it was at the time, to go. We were in, they were in Lake Charles, Louisiana, and I was living in, oh God, Longview, Texas.
okay.
Um, and that, so they drove all the way up to see
Mhm.
him because they're like, no, we can't not do this. And just watching, like, I knew what it meant because they both were they had to drive back through the middle of the night to get back to Lake Charles to teach in the morning.
Okay.
which
Okay.
which I was like, and part of me also like, call in sick. Like, there's certain things you can be like, no, I'm calling this one in. um but but that, like, watching them hold him for the first time was one of those life-changing moments because I realized I'm never going to have this opportunity if I keep going the way I am. Like,
Mm,
I'm going to die. It's
mm,
just
mm,
bam and done.
mm.
um and then it's been, like you said, it's been continuous. It's, yeah, every time I think, all right, I've got things settled down, I'm going through another one just in the last year around anxiety. Like, dealing with a bunch of stuff there. Like, yeah, we don't,
Yeah,
again, we don't talk about those things as men.
we don't. We don't.
There's just no spaces where we do. So for those of you wondering what the hell we're doing here, um, we're doing that here. Where's your heart? And that's
We're
our,
putting it
that's
all out there for everybody to see every
just
Monday.
to
This
have,
is how it's
uh,
coming.
just to have a space where men can do this,
Mm,
and where we practice it.
mm.
um I hesitate to say model it because we're going to be fucking this up a lot. Um,
Yeah.
but I think that's part of, like, I think that's part of, like, I don't know, part of what
Well,
I need. I need a laboratory. I
but
need a space where
that's
that's okay.
vulnerability, right? That's
Mm,
vulnerability. That's exactly what we're talking about. And if we can't model it, how can we influence those that we have in our sphere of influence? How can we create a better society, especially with
mm-hmm.
everything we have going on right now, which I know we're
Oh
going to
yeah.
get to a little bit later in the show. But yeah, modeling is the best way to lead. And I've had
Even
a
when
lot of
it's modeling the oopses.
Well, especially when it's modeling the oopses, because we all have them, right? It's
Yeah.
funny because I
Yeah.
remember I was fired from a position in 2016, and I'm still going to write this. I'm going to post it at some point. I can't believe I'm talking about this in public, but whatever, it's all good. And it was a good opportunity, but it was a bit of a toxic environment.
Mm.
And not only did I call out the situation, but I acted a little bit. I acted a lot differently. And long story short, post. I wanted to write about it, and I wanted to post about the fact that I was fired at 40 years old.
Yeah.
And as hard as I thought it would be, it actually wasn't, because it was the actions that I took that actually led to me being terminated were rooted in my values. And not only were they
Mm.
rooted in my values, but the people who actually were directly affected by some of those decisions actually benefited from some of that. Now, it may not have necessarily been the old culture of the organization, but it was definitely the culture that we were trying to create. But the feedback that I received from this was, hey, you shouldn't talk about that. Are you crazy? Why would you put something like that on LinkedIn? What's wrong
Oh
with you? Oh
wow.
yeah, oh yeah. And again, from people I love, I respect, and they were
Yeah.
really, truly, truly giving me what they felt was the best advice.
Yeah.
Um,
From the
but
heart.
in my but in my heart, I knew it wasn't the truth. I think that we should be putting out, hey, we tried something, things didn't work. Here's why it didn't work. Here's what I learned from it, and here's how we move forward in a more aware way, or an aware manner, as human beings. And that's the kind of energy I want to put out in the world. Not want to. That is the way I am showing up in the world in every single direction that I move. And that's why I think a platform like this is so important. One, because I get a chance to converse with my brother, and we get a chance to
Hmm.
reconnect. But two, people need to hear this. People need to hear men talking about it. People need to hear a white man and a black man talking about it. I mean, not that that should matter, but unfortunately, it matters way too much. Um,
Yeah.
and it's interesting because even in comments like that, there are going to be tons of people who do not agree with that in this certain climate. But I do think that when we're living in our truth, and I know that I am, especially in this type of environment, I'm okay with that. And if I
Yeah.
if I have to lose people who I consider friends, I still consider you my friend. Um, but if I'm coming and being generative from a collaborative standpoint and trying to bring people together around open dialogue, candid dialogue, respectful dialogue, where we can still be rooted in who we are and how we feel, I think that's the way that we should try to move. All of us should try to move throughout our lives. So I'm pretty unapologetic about that. So
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, man, yeah,
No, that's big. That's huge.
yeah,
So,
bro. What's up? Talk to me.
all right. So you said something that, like, all right, bluntly, if I was having this conversation with a white man who said, I don't think that should matter right now, well, I'd be getting on him because privilege is a thing, and like, as much as like we're about the same age. Like,
Yeah.
I grew up. My dad's a band director. He had one of the first black drum majors in the school that he taught at in the 80s,
Mm,
came in under him. Like, he was very proactive about having leadership, and that school was like, white folks were the minority at that school, so it wasn't hard, you know,
mm,
but he was very on it about wanting to make sure that women had leadership positions. Um, Folks of different ethnic varieties had leadership positions, stuff like that. So that
mm,
was kind of the attitude I was raised with, and that notion that, you shouldn't have to see race, we should be colorblind, all that shit.
mm.
Um, and it's like, so when you say that, how is it not color blindness? Or are we talking about the thing that is in the future, that one day, when we don't have white privilege existing anymore and we don't have to have those conversations.
I have my own I have my own thoughts and comments on white
All
privilege.
right,
We're
all
gonna
right,
we're
you
gonna
do.
get on that too, because
All right, all right.
I am not. I don't believe in absolute anything, right? So
Yeah.
so a blanket statement around white privilege I don't think is correct. I don't. But continue with your story because I know we're going to
Well,
get it because we talked
no,
about
you're
this
not
a lot.
gonna you're not gonna be into another thing that I always chew on because I like to distinguish between conditional privilege and absolute privilege.
Okay. Okay.
Like I think if I don't think there are many people in the world who can say I grabbed her by the pussy and get elected president, right? Like
I probably would never be elected president because I'm not a polarizing person, but I certainly would not be elected president if I said that one.
right? Like
And I don't even think that way. So, man.
no, like that's it's abhorrent. We know that, and like there's a different, like you said, privilege is a spectrum.
Mm,
And I think it is really important to acknowledge that a lot of what's happening from white people and especially white men is driven from a fear of loss of privilege, which is very
mm,
different from like somebody who can say something like that and get elected president.
mm,
Like that's I think an important point that you're making.
mm. Yeah. Okay.
You're going,
Let's
just fire off,
no.
just go.
Let's table that one because we want people to kind of know who we
All
are
right,
too.
yeah,
So
go.
we want to get into those stories because that's deep, man. I mean, there's a lot that goes in. I just I'm probably an idealist. Um, I think that the majority of people on the face of this planet are doing the best that they possibly can with what they know. Okay. I'll say 85%. Now I do think that we do have some, some Jeffrey Epsteins and those kind of people who are just monsters, right? To be able to overtly, consistently, strategically do the things that they systematically and do the things that
Yep.
they do. And that's a different conversation. But I think people are doing the
Yeah.
best that they possibly can. That's number one. Number two, all of us, including myself, have levels of shame, have levels of
Hmm.
insecurity that we project out in different ways, right? And
True.
so I just I don't think the majority of people, white people, walk around intending to be racist and promote privilege. Now, it doesn't mean that that doesn't exist in some ways. It doesn't mean that the system that we're in the United States, I mean, factually, it was not built for Native Black Americans to be a part of the economy. It just wasn't.
Yeah.
I mean, anybody who debates
Yep.
that is, I'm not saying that's the intent now, but it wasn't built on that for
Hmm.
centuries, right? So, in knowing that and knowing that that's a fact, seeing that it's only been about 50 or 60 years since legally, people of Native Black American descent were not discriminated against. Of course, we have a lot of remnants of that system that's a part of our society right now, and they need to be dealt with. Um, but I don't approach anybody with a blanket anything. Like I said when I started off, I want to be a generative person. I'm going to
Hmm.
be a generative person, and you have to prove to me that you suck. Now, make no mistake. Once you prove to Torian that you suck, I'm gonna believe you, and I can act accordingly. I'm the nicest guy in the world, and so I'm not. But and so when you talk about color and stuff, I actually think that not recognizing color is a bad thing because it's a part of who I am. Right now, it
Yeah.
doesn't make me who I am. It doesn't make you who you are, but it is a part of who I am. Just like if you were to say, Torian is. I was about to say my age, but I'm not. Torian is of a certain age, right?
Gen X. Let's
Yeah,
Gen Xers.
Gen X,
All right.
right? Like late Gen X, like almost millennial Gen X. Throw that out there, right?
Oh,
Um,
okay. That's where we're gonna go.
um, but that doesn't make me 100% who I am. It's just the way I liken it is I've learned to look at my life as a toolbox, and I can get different sizes of toolboxes, and I can put different tools in it. So I can put a hammer, I can put a screwdriver, I can put a tape measure, I can put tape, paint, I can put all these different things in there. And so, yeah, the color of my skin happens to be a part of who I am, but it's not 100% who I am. But I do want to be acknowledged, like, hey, that's part of who I am. Just like I don't have hair. Okay, then Torian, you're bald by choice because I do have hair. I just choose to cut it off because it's easy. But it's an acknowledgement. So what we have to do as human beings or as a society is be able to acknowledge, but then be able to appreciate differences because differences are what make our world great. Differences are actually one of the things that I think makes America great, right? Because we do have a lot of different people from a lot of different places, and some of it is rooted in very bad situations and trauma. Some of it isn't, but we still have an opportunity to show up better today than we did yesterday. And that's all I want to do. It doesn't mean that we don't address systemic issues. It doesn't mean that we call out people who are doing bad things, but we don't have to do it in a way that is always polarizing. And I think it can be detrimental to society because, well, I know it's detrimental to society because as men, we have to show up in a different way. And that's one of the reasons why we created this show, and we're going to continue to put it out there and just be 100% candid around how we feel, because we mask a lot. We do.
Yeah.
Man,
Oh God, yeah.
we do a lot of covering. I do it. I still do it now with my mom
Yep.
as a caregiver. It can be really scratchy at times, but I'm learning how when it becomes uncomfortable and I get to that line of, ooh, that doesn't feel good or it doesn't feel familiar, I want to make
Hmm.
sure that I push myself a little bit beyond it. And that's how you grow. And we need more growth. We need more people who are looking around saying, you know what? My community pretty much has been the same. It looks the same. We talk about the same things. I need to intentionally expand the horizon of my experiences so I get more insight and I can look at things a little bit differently. And so that's how I want to show up, man. And I hope and I pray and I meditate and all these different things around projecting that out into the world, man. Because I'm drained with all the negativity that's out there. I don't care where it's coming from, what side it's on,
Yeah,
what the
yeah.
melanin of the skin is out there, and I stand firm by that. I mean, I've gotten a lot of. I'm kind of jumping around a little bit, but I've gotten a lot of messages from people who feel a certain way because I'm not approaching the current situation in a visceral manner, and that's never going to happen because I'm in a process of healing. And I think that you can address systemic issues and talk about things without being a toxic person, period. Like it or not.
I
That's
hear
where I
that.
stand.
Yeah.
So,
I mean, like right now, I'm struggling with is in communities that tend to be washed. Get my gaming community, for example,
mm,
is very whitewashed, and I'm really struggling to hold uh, what you call the generative principle, or holding that like more neutral place and to be able to be engaged in conversation and growth with folks who can't, I guess, figure out how to figure out the privilege. Like white privilege is whether we don't want it to exist or not,
mm,
still exists. Um, and it, like, I think that's the bit that bothers me now in the spaces is the ignorance. It's why I wasn't raised this, and I'm having to learn. And as you said, I want to push edges. Like I really try to show up in spaces where I'm a minority one way or another, because it is pain. I agree, man. It's it's weird and
yeah,
painful.
right,
Like that's what growth is, though. It's the death of the old so that the new can come forth.
right,
It's a grieving process every time we grow, every time we
right,
read something.
yeah,
Um, but I guess there's just that part of me that over willful ignorance and just okay. It's one thing to be like that's the way I was raised, and another thing to be like I refuse to acknowledge my privilege.
mm.
And that's the point at which I'm like, I don't know how to relate to you then, because
Yeah, it's tough, man. I mean, we talked about this, you and I. So I feel that we have privilege just as men, right? I mean,
oh yeah,
racism is an issue,
absolutely.
no question, but even older than that is a suppression of women and the feminine. Let's keep it real, right? And we've talked about
Yep,
this.
yep.
And I would be lying if I said that I, in some way, in some part of my life, was not a part of that at some point, right? Whether
Oh
it was
yeah, me too.
known or not. And when I was working in a corporate environment, because I was a man and because I had an athletic background, that helped to open up doors in a lot of places too. I was with the guys, and I was doing the early morning workouts, and that gave me access to people in a very different way. than it would
Yeah.
maybe a female, right? Um, but the bigger issue, or the bigger way to kind of look at it from a human standpoint, is it's identity, man. It's what is it that you identify with, and what makes you feel like you. And for some people, it is their whiteness. For some people, it is their blackness. For some people, it's where they went to school. When I listen to people, one of the things that I like to do is really listen to um, the peak moments of their life. Like, you can listen to a person and
Mm,
kind of tell, like, okay, this period of their life was when they were hitting it. They were hitting their stride.
yeah.
They felt good. They felt empowered. They felt like they had community. And I think it's very easy for us to always want to gravitate back toward that. It's kind of like an Al Bundy syndrome. And I'm not trying to say that in a derogatory way, but it's but I love Married with Children. That's my show. But um, but it's also the opposite of growth, right? Like,
Yes.
if you listen to all the people that talk about growth, it's like as soon as you get comfortable is when you should start moving, right? As soon as things become familiar is when you should start moving. And it's very
Yeah.
counterintuitive to the human experience, because for most of us, even as adults, excuse me, think about what most of us do. We go to school, whatever level you go, high school, college, graduate school, really doesn't matter, right? Typically we go find a job or a career, something that we like to do, and we become familiar with it, and we try to protect what we're familiar with because we want certainty,
Yep.
right? We want to know that certain things are coming, and we want to know what to expect. It's part of the human experience, and it's part of human nature. But if you look at people, places, or things that grow in an exponential way, they're always pushing themselves to be in environments, to talk to people, to do things that they really don't feel comfortable doing and or know if they can do.
Yeah.
And I think we need more people trying to bridge the gap in that way. I do. And that's regardless of background and things of that nature. And that's a hard pill to swallow, especially when you've built your whole life around an identity of one particular thing. It's threatening to people. So
Absolutely.
when people become upset and they become visceral, it doesn't upset me because I try to understand where they're coming from. But for me, what's really important is to try to plant seeds as much as I possibly can that hopefully, prayerfully, will sprout in some way, shape, or form. That's it. And that's just how I
Yeah.
want to show up, man.
No, it's well said. Because I mean, I decided to stay engaged with one gaming community where, um, I mean, exactly that, where that's my approach. I'm
Mm.
like, all right, this is a community that's not going to come out and say, hey, we support Black Lives Matters, or Black Lives Matter. We are not going to come out and say that. And it, I'm furious. I hurt. I'm really struggling with it. But for now, I decided exactly the approach that you mentioned. Like, I got to remain engaged. Somebody has to remain in these whitewashed spaces and try to call forth the better part of these people,
Yeah.
and the better part of myself while
Right.
I'm doing it. Um, so, all right. So we've touched on Black Lives Matter
You want
stuff
to jump right in?
here. Are we gonna? I do also have to say
Let's
I'm
go.
putting a pin in this one, but what you were talking about there, human nature not wanting to change and stuff. There's
Mm.
a whole episode we got to do on that, and I got a person that I want to bring in on that. She's amazing. She's read all the neuroscience stuff on it, but it really is literally we hate change. We think it's going to kill us.
Yeah.
So I
Yeah.
look forward to that one. But right now, let's get to this topic.
Yeah. I think so. So here's how I try to approach everything in life. I
You're
try to bring.
thinking again, by the way.
No, 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 no. I'm feeling this
All
out,
right,
but
all right,
but
all right, all
but
right.
but you see me looking at the ceiling, so I'm trying to find
I
words
know.
around how I feel about it, because we also have to realize too that the nature of what we're creating here is new for a lot of people. I mean, there are people that are pissed off at the fact that we're doing this and we're in the middle of racial change, and
Yeah.
I'm black and you're white. Like, there are people who really feel like I shouldn't be doing this with you because you're white. Like, I
Well,
don't
I
know who
mean,
they are, but I'm sure they feel that way.
just to keep it 100, there's part of me that wonders why the hell you're talking to me. So I'm with you on it. Like,
Mm,
and with them on that. I get that.
mm.
And
Because I believe we have to model what we want to create in
yeah,
this world, right? That's why. And to me, we have a connection. And
yeah,
yes, you are white and I'm black, and that's great, and I notice it and I celebrate it, and it's all good and it's all love, and that's part of your toolbox. But I think modeling what we would like to see more of, which is where I think our current president really missed the opportunity, regardless of the political association, because I'm not a visceral person even with that, but I think that it was a huge opportunity to say, okay, listen, we're at an inflection point where we
Yeah.
need words that are going to be more collaborative and more healing as opposed to more divisive, right?
Yeah.
Now, there are people who are not even going to like that because it's not in their gang, right? I've been calling it a gang for the past few weeks because that's what it is. It's like, are you with my gang or are you with their gang? Mentality is exactly the same. Um, but getting back to the narrative part, um, our life is made. We believe the stories that we tell ourselves, and that's why one of the things that I always like to talk to people about or ask people is like, where do you get your information from, right? Because if you look at the sources of information that we have now, they're all skewed. They're all trying to lead. We're they're trying to lead us to a certain direction, and then we're listening to things that reaffirm the position that we already have, which is the antithesis of growth, right? It's like,
Yeah.
let me tune in so I can hear more of what I already think and what I already believe, as opposed to saying, okay, here's my stance. Let me try to get information, talk to other people, dialogue, hear something else that may be a little bit different, and try to understand where they may be coming from. And so when people hear the term Black Lives Matter, it's been packaged and marketed in a derogatory way, right? In a way that's visceral.
Say more.
Well, because the way that it initially came out was, hey, all lives can't matter until Black Lives Matter, which is a fundamentally
Yeah.
true statement. I mean, it's just a
Yes.
logically true statement, right? But then for people who feel threatened by something like that, there has to be an antithesis to say, well, that shouldn't really matter. We shouldn't even talk about that because all lives matter. And yeah, that's true. I agree with that. All lives do matter. I believe that blue lives
Yeah.
matter. I believe that frogs' lives matter. I believe that ants' lives matter. I mean, and I'm not trying to be derogatory toward the term Black Lives Matter, but here's this is the story that I tell the people. So I've been blessed in a lot of ways, but I've been blessed to have friends literally all around the world. And I've gotten calls from friends from Poland, Germany,
Mm.
Sweden, Denmark, um, Belgium, all countries that traditionally would be considered white or Caucasian, right?
Yeah.
And they would probably consider themselves white as well, but they're certainly not American. My point is that these are people who called me not because they have context as to what's going on, because they really don't even understand it. They're not American, but they're concerned about me, right?
Yeah.
Because I'm their friend. And regardless of what's going on, even if they don't understand it or not, they want to check in on me, right?
Yep.
So to me, what Black Lives Matter means is if we as human beings, regardless of your race, regardless of your social status, are these humanitarians who believe in the greater good, and we want to reach out and we want to help people, and then we have a community of people that are at an inflection point now, but this has been happening for a really long time, that are saying, hey, you know what, now is a time where we need to be heard. This has been going on way too long and we've hit a tipping
Yeah.
point, and really essentially crying out for help. Then just like my friends did to me, I don't have to identify. They didn't have to identify with me. They didn't even have to know exactly what was going on. But because they cared, they made it a point to reach out and bridge the gap. To me, there's no different than Black Lives Matter, right? That's how people should be looking at it and should be approaching it. But that's not how it's sold in media outlets. It's sold in a way to say, oh, this means that, which means it's a threat to you. Therefore, there
Yeah.
has to be a counter. In order for them, Black Lives or Black Lives Matter, to win, you have to lose. And
You
that
have to
zero
lose. Yes.
and that zero sum game of way of life is honestly, if we want to talk about that, that's a very masculine, war driven trait. And that's all the stuff that
Yes.
we've been talking against, as you and I have been talking about that. And I
Yeah.
just don't think that's the way to go. So that's my explanation of it. That's how I see it. That's how I process it. And there are a lot of people that are black that don't agree with me, and that's fine. That's okay.
All right. So where's the feelings in there?
It's painful, man. I mean, I'm black, and I've
Yeah.
experienced. I have a lot of experiences that have been derogatory from a racial standpoint, and it hurts. It hurts because everybody wants to be seen, man. Everybody wants to be heard. like every human being, you know, like just I want somebody to sit down and listen to me and just have some empathy as to where I'm coming from. And I have been privileged in a lot of different ways in that my parents helped to set me up, and they kind of walked me to the river. I mean, I still had to drink on a few things, but you know, my mom essentially gave up her life literally for me to have the opportunities that I have. And
Yeah.
that still didn't take away from having some racial issues and racial challenges in my life. And so when I see my brothers and sisters on film, when I'm out there protesting, because I've been out there twice myself, um, it hurts, man. It hurts that it's this visceral thing around a community of people that I'm a part of, that this has been a habitual thing that's been happening. And it's like people just don't care. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
people who are not a part of the black community don't care. And then there are people within the black community that don't really care either. Like it's gotten to a point to where it's like, screw it, I've had enough. Nothing matters anymore. And
Yeah.
I don't think that's why we're on the face of this planet. And it hurts me because I'm an empath. I like to listen to people. I like to connect with
Mm,
people. And so even the first day I was out protesting in Chicago, well, not really. I was there. I can't really say I was marching with the protesters. I was there, but my goal was to talk to protesters. I was talking to police officers. I wanted to be a part of the experience itself. And to be quite honest with you, the majority of police officers there were like, "Okay, we get it. You know, this is a part of America. Like, it's cool. You know." And then the protesters, you know, they were doing their thing, hanging up their signs. Everybody was saying what they had to say, but it was those few. It's like the fringe people that their identity was connected to something that was visceral, that if it was in a way that was um confrontational but not violent, that it wasn't enough for them. And
mm,
that's painful, man. That hurts because it's happened way too much in human history, and to see it continuing to happen, especially in a situation like this, it's unnecessary. And I think it's just something that it's draining for me, to be quite honest with you. I mean, we talked about this. I'm really, really tired right now. I mean, there's no other way to
yeah.
say it. I'm tired. You can probably see it in my face. You know?
Yeah. No,
Yeah.
I think to me that's the part that yeah, all the folks, all of my friends who are wrestling with this issue as people of color, it that's their response right now. We're tired.
Mm.
Like we, I don't want. Yeah, you're a good friend. You called me. You checked on me. I don't want to talk, and that needs to be okay. Like
Yeah. Yeah.
um, and that's a thing. And it's I also so I read an article. Can't remember what news source it was. It was from somebody who participated in the protests back in the '60s in the
Mm.
civil rights movement,
Mm.
um, who did make the point that the thing that they're, in spite of having had the hope and had it killed multiple times over the last 50 years,
Mm.
60 years, they said the thing that does feel fundamentally different right now to them is that they're seeing more people of a variety of backgrounds, more white people is what they said, but then they named other folks
Right.
participating in the movement.
Right.
Um, that there's something happening where people are noticing that their shit is tied up in this. Um, Black feminism talks about intersectionality and about the fact that oppressions don't just, like, it's not like 2 + 2 = 4, but if you're African American and a woman, well, instead of having just two sources of
Oh
oppression,
yeah.
you've got 85 right off
Yeah.
the bat. Like,
No
it's
question.
exponential.
Yeah.
um, and that you can play that game with any number of different intersections of oppression. And it not play that game. You can look at your identity or yourself
Mm.
that way.
Mm.
Um, but there's something that's happening right now where people are starting to realize that as we begin to disassemble these isms,
Mm. Mm.
these points of privilege that also have oppression tied into them. or marginalization, that as we begin to disassemble them, the whole web comes untied. And one of the ones that this country, as you've mentioned, is built on is racism. The capitalism is built on is racism. So
as we're practicing it today, yeah.
yeah, I mean, I call it unfettered capitalism.
Okay.
Like, it's one thing to say, like should a market exist? Okay. It's another to have it systematically be like, no, we are going to find ways. Like, we didn't abolish slavery, we just moved it to prisons. And
Factual.
we didn't, yeah, we didn't get rid of oppression of people of color. We just made it so that we're just going to figure out what we can make illegal for people, and that's been in the systematic path of this country. Whether it's, we can talk about this from a border crossing perspective as well. Like, what, 20 years? I can't remember when the date was, but it didn't used to be a crime to cross the border. They would just shove you back over to your side. But then we had to make it illegal so that we could call these people criminals, so that then we could feed the prison system, which feeds big corporations. And there's the tie back into capitalism. Like, so this is the mess that we're in. All right, so I've been babbling from my head a lot. Where's my heart in all this? No, I'm realizing I'm doing the same thing, man.
Sorry, bro. It's okay, man. This is our first show, so we're gonna mess up a lot. And it's not even messing up. It's just letting it roll. But I think you're right in that. So think about what you just said. So if my success and identity has been built into that system that you're just talking about, I'm gonna push back. Any status quo. Listen, any status quo of any system is gonna push back. Period. A politician, I don't care if you're Barack Obama or Donald Trump, your first priority is to get reelected into your position. Okay, you're going to keep that position of power. Now, how you do it is debatable. The policies that you sit on top of it is debatable as well. So I get it, and I think it's deeper than what we're seeing, right? And this is the esoteric Torian. This is the spiritual journey Torian over the past 15.
Excuses for that.
No, but I'm talking to people who don't know, because there might be people listening who are like, Torian, really? Like, where is this coming from? But I think we are seeing a spiritual. We're feeling, we are experiencing a core spiritual paradigm shift in how human beings exist on this planet. Now, this is just one point, but we're seeing it in a lot of different ways, from our climate, from how we value money and currency, to how we relate as people, to the definition of family, right? Regardless of, what side or up, down, left, right, or whatever you might be on, like everybody is feeling it, right? And some people are feeling it in one direction, some people are feeling it in another. But what we do know is that it is very uncomfortable for a lot of us, and it's exponentially different than it has been in the past, at least from my experience. I mean, not that I've experienced everything from the past. And so I try to look at everything like that from a soul level, man. I see the cursory stuff that's happening, but when I see this level of anger and virile talk, I see pain and hurt. Like, that hurts me, because in order for me to show up in that way, or for a human to show up in that way, there has to be some deep rooted fear, pain, insecurity, shame, anger that's coming out to do that. And that's the root cause.
And what kind of a system needs to perpetuate shame, pain, fear, anxiety, all the things that you just mentioned, in order to control its populace?
One that's dying. One that's dying. And that is what the majority of people are starting to feel and to realize. And so for anyone, and I can include myself, right? Because I'm of a certain age, and I've been, I've been successful, right? According to a lot of people. Yeah. So part of my identity is wrapped up into that too. I mean, this is probably what took me so long to put something like this out. I mean, I've been wanting to do this for years, man. Just sit down and talk about how I really feel, without it being, oh my gosh, like, what's the corporate person who might hear this is going to feel like, or something like that. Just how do you really feel about things, man? And as I'm saying it, I can feel the energy. It just feels good to be like, yeah, sit in it, man. It's okay. Anyway, what were you going to say?
Oh, you're putting the mask down. So how long are we going today? Because I got a couple of questions that I want to close with when we're ready.
Let's go another 6-7 minutes. Close it out.
All right.
Put a little teaser out there. What's up?
So what does your heart want for Black Lives Matter?
Oh boy, what I want, what I want is different than what we're seeing. Two things that I want. The first one is an internal. And when I say internal, I mean within the Black culture, within the Black community. I want a focus on emotional, psychological, and spiritual healing. Now, regardless of how we got here, regardless of where it came from, regardless of if we're perpetuating it or it was being perpetuated on us, and I'm speaking as a person that is a Native Black American, I really want us, particularly as men, to start having the internal conversation of how do we start healing ourselves so we can show up better for our communities.
Hmm.
Now, that message doesn't go over well right now, right? And that's okay, but that's really what I want. So that's why my that's why my conversation to people has been centered around healing and compassion, not forgetting, not being docile, not being meek, because Torian is none of those things, and nor do I think people should show up in that way.
I've seen that. Mm-mm.
What'd you say?
I said I've seen you on the mat. Mm-mm.
Yeah, I'm saying like, and, but to me, you don't that shouldn't be what we have to lead with, right?
Yeah.
Anybody, but particularly in this situation. Now, but I also on the flip side of that, I understand where it comes from. I mean,
Yes.
to
Yeah. Yeah.
see,
Yeah.
I've had my own experiences with police officers, some really bad, a lot really good, right? But the pain to see someone murdered on camera, like a fly on a window, like it's not like no emotion. That broke my heart. Every time I see it, I cry. To this day, it's been weeks, and it breaks my heart, right? To know that someone is capable of doing that, and because we wrestle, we have physical contact, we choke
Hmm.
people out or try to all the time, and it takes a lot to hold somebody so tight to their breath
Yeah.
goes away till they die.
This is not a fucking accident,
It's
is what
not
I
an
want to
accident.
scream there.
It's
Yeah.
not an accident. So I feel that as well. Um, so anyway, the internal conversation is the healing part. Now the external conversation is actually more economic for me because I think that the Black community should have a better understanding of economics and economic empowerment because I do know that is how our country actually works. And I think we need to do much more in economic empowerment, more so than we are doing in social justice. And that's not a popular opinion either, but I think that's part of the fundamentals. I do. And that's more of a logic based thing, but that's how the system that we operate in, that's how it works. It works on economics, man.
I
It
don't
does.
know. Personally, I want to change that system too. I want to tear that one apart too. But that's
Okay, but
that's another show. So
yeah. So that's what
um,
but the big thing is healing,
yeah.
man. It is healing. Again, it doesn't mean being docile, being meek, or any of those things, but it's just you can show up in strength when you're courageously vulnerable, where you are not we don't have to lead with anger and in violence. And anywhere, whether it's in our homes or with people that have differing opinions, or even people that have oppressed us. I
Mm.
just don't think that's the way we should lead.
Well, and I do want to. I think, like as we've talked about this, I do want to highlight the part of you that also shows up and says repeatedly, and I've heard it repeatedly on this
Mm,
stream and over the last couple of
mm,
weeks as we've chewed on it, is
yeah.
this, and I totally get where it's coming from.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's just not the thing that I'm going to hold up and say this is where I want to go or who I want to be. Um, these are the things, and that, I mean, that's your idealism. In in line with the pragmatism of, and this is where we are,
Yeah.
and this stuff has to shift.
Yeah. No, I feel
um
it. I feel it just like we all do. I've experienced it. I feel it.
yeah.
But how we process it and then how we return that energy, that's a choice,
Mm.
right? If you're a believer of God or Yahweh or Allah, whatever noun you choose to attach to your religion, we have the ability to do that. We do. And it's a choice. And so for me, my narrative may be a little bit different because again, going back to that healing process, I intentionally started a healing journey around 2006, 2007, where I was like, listen, I've checked all the boxes, but this ain't it. And I know it's not it. So let me
Yeah.
go, in the search of and along my journey. The Alchemist, man.
Yeah.
Read The Alchemist if you're listening. It's one of my favorite books. So how about you? How do you feel about it, man? Speak on it. Black Lives Matter.
It, man, hmm. Ah, all right, it's
Come on, you
all
can't
here.
choke
All
up
right,
now,
so
bro. We've been talking
there's
2
part of
weeks.
me. All right, so there's part of me that is like, I want to go buy a gun because I'm ready for the revolution. There's like part of me that's like, yeah, let's go. Um, because this shit has to end, and
Mm,
the cynic in me is very afraid that it's not going to end without a war, because that's how the U.S. does this. The change on the level that is going to be required for this.
mm,
I mean, that's what I fear.
mm.
So the cynic in me shows up there,
Okay.
and the level of just heart that I'm seeing from protesters of over and over their ability to show up, and I think there's such nuance there, and like I don't want to like disregard that there has been violence at some of these protests,
Mm,
absolutely,
for sure.
but I refuse to let that be the fucking story, because
Yeah.
again and again for hours on end we're seeing people show up in the face of brutal violence, in the face of chemical weapons. That gives me such hope. uh, Whatever we're at now, 20 days of protests in this country, coast to coast, in every state. uh, that's incredible to me. I never thought I'd live to see it, honestly. Um, so part of me feels more hopeful than I ever have.
Mm,
Part of me feels more hopeful with the number of, like, I've been wrestling with my privilege for 15 years. Like it literally was 15 years ago this summer that somebody said, I don't give a shit whether you want to be called white or not. We're calling you white because that's what people see. And I had to learn that, like, oh shit, this identity isn't my choice. This privilege isn't my choice. It just gets shoved onto me, and then everything that I do has it, whether I want it there or not. So to have, and for 15 years it's been only in very small places where I could have those conversations, and I'm hearing it now much larger in many more places than I would have
mm,
thought. um God, that feels good.
mm,
Like,
mm,
I,
mm,
feeling like you're the only one carrying something, for that hurts, and it sucks to be
mm.
alone. We are social animals, we need other people.
Yes.
So
Yes.
that part of me is just energized and alive, and I can't, and then there's things like this. Bluntly, man, if we'd have bumped into each other even a year ago, I don't know that I would have been able to engage with you, you know
That's
but
fair.
just like the magic of what happened, and the magic of constantly, figuring out how do we connect, how do we work together one way or another over the last 6 months,
Yep.
um, and persistence on it, and your welcoming of it, in spite of, like, the gulfs that the world tells us should exist between us. It's huge, huge hope, and like it's exercising part of my heart that I love exercising. You know what I mean?
I do, and that's what we need. We need more models of that. Not saying that I'm anyone special or anything, but this is what we need more of: more dialogue, more conversation. I listened to a. Are you familiar with the Breakfast Club? It's a show out of New York. It's a morning show. It's like a hip hop and R&B radio station, but basically they did a 45 minute to an hour segment with Rush Limbaugh. So you're talking about like two polarized, yeah. But I loved it. Now they argued, they disagreed, but you could tell the nature, because I listened to Rush Limbaugh, right? I've listened to him for years, to be quite honest with you.
Whew.
I listen to everything, man.
I know.
I listen to it all. I do.
I don't know
So
how you drink from that fire hose.
well, because I've learned how to listen to things and let them go through me. I don't have to take everything in, man. I don't have to get offended by everything. I don't get offended by most things, to be quite honest with you. And I feel very confident in being able to defend myself when it's worthy of defending. Right?
Mm,
Most things don't even need to be acknowledged, man. I don't. Okay, that's cool. Like I'm not even going to give that my energy. But getting back to this radio
yeah.
show. the tone of their voice, the tone of Rush Limbaugh's voice, of the Breakfast Club members, Charlemagne the God, was very different. You could tell that there was a respect there because one, they were humans. Two, they work in the same industry. They're in media and broadcasting. So I was like, man, everybody should be required to hear this because they still held their position. They said, hey, listen, we agree to disagree on these certain things. Maybe we need to continue the conversation, but it's really good that we started this conversation together. Nothing was resolved, but people were heard. And those are
Yeah.
the type of seeds that we have to plant in people. And that's why I listen to everything, man, because I really want to try to understand where people are coming from, not just in what they're saying, but why they say it and what are the rooted feelings that they have that are actually making them say them and make it come from a particular place. And I don't want to change that, man. That's why we have to make sure the show is out and we got to bring on guests and talk to people who want to add to the conversation because we need more of this, man. We need to make sure that we're listening to people who feel marginalized, who don't have a voice, including heterosexual white males, right?
Mm.
Because in a lot of places, they're the enemy now. And
Yeah.
I don't think a blanket you're in this category now you're the enemy is the way to go. And that's not a popular comment right now, but that's how I feel.
Yeah.
Go ahead, man. Go ahead.
No, I like I'm so torn on that one, man, because it
You can't
oh
say all. You can't say all of
no,
anything does all of
you're
everything. You can't.
you are absolutely correct. And okay, you're correct. I don't need to stand in judgment. I'm resonating with that. And
Mm,
I think it's a struggle. Personally, I have a big struggle with that. Because because of also something you mentioned earlier where it was
mm.
until you prove that you suck, and that's and there's a lot of I guess the big thing there is how do we call that forth from that particular part of the population. And I'm not even sure it's just because white when you say white man, we
Mm,
automatically picture somebody who's heteronormed, right? Whether they are or not. Whether we read them that way or not, we
exactly.
picture them as Christian, whether they are or not. You know,
Okay.
like there's all these assumptions that go along with that identity, and you're absolutely right. It is far more complex, and there's a lot of personal experiences there. And the like I have to know how much gas I have in my tank for that conversation that day, whether I can engage this person
Mm.
and deal with some of the stuff that is going to come at me because because I'm going to be wearing a kilt or a skirt and I'm not going to be obeying their man code, like it's just not me. Um,
Well,
so
you mean because of how you're coming, or with the level of vulnerability, or
it's all of that, right? I'm like when I how do okay, you're caregiving for your mom right now. I've been a
yeah.
homemaker for 13, 14 years now. Like,
Mhm.
but those are never parts of our identity that we lead with.
Yeah, I leave with my character. I mean, again, that's not gonna sound good to a lot of people, but
Yeah.
that's what I have control over. Like, you know, man, we what's how long have we been
We're
on
at,
here?
we're
Because
at a buck we're at a buck eight.
we're
We got to
just getting
close this
started,
out.
man. So we'll come back to this, but
Yeah.
I lead with what I can control. Okay,
Hmm.
Torian can control how he shows up. Torian can control with the things that trigger him. Torian can certainly control his response. Torian can control how well he listens. Torian can control how well he clears space so that he has white space so that when you're talking to me, I can hear
Mm,
you and not what I think you're going to say or what I think you should say. And it's
well
hard.
said.
It is a practice. Um, it can be triggering at times, but for the most part, at least for me, it's always helped bridge the gap, man. And it's why it's hard for me to just throw people in a category. One, because I don't want to be thrown in a category by
Yeah,
anybody,
yeah,
right? I don't want people, oh, you ran track and therefore this. I mean, yes, that's a part of it, but that's not all of it. So ask me.
yeah.
I tell people all the time, if you want to know, ask me. I'll tell you, this is what I think. This is why I think it. And we can go from there. And so it's really that getting back to the Black Lives Matter. Two things that I think all people want, but particularly Black Lives Matter at this particular moment.
Hmm.
The first thing is acknowledgement. It doesn't even have to be acknowledgement of exactly of what everyone agrees. It's just the acknowledgement that there are a lot of people who are in pain
Yeah.
for whatever reason. And if you're human and you can't stop and listen to that, yeah, you something is up. Like I need to talk to you more because we're humans and you're talking about you're Christian and where do you go here or you're Muslim or whatever, right? Like practice that shit. You know what I mean? Like really, you don't have to agree
Yep.
with it. You don't even have to know what it is. Why are there so many people that are feeling this way? That's number one. And then two, it's for a heightened sense of self-awareness, right? And I think that's what people want. It's like, listen, it's like my friends that called me, I don't really want them to apologize to me. I just want them to be more aware. Hey, bro, listen, man. If all you're talking to are one particular type of people, just make it a point to try to reach out to other people.
Yeah.
Period. It's not that difficult to me. Now it does become difficult when our identity is tied to the community that we founded in, and it's hard to leave that because once this is what I found even with my family, and we'll shut off because we sit on the phone for hours. So for anybody who's listening, um, it's hard for me with my family because I'm not the same
Yeah.
person that I was when I left this area 18 years ago,
Yep.
right? I mean, I look the same, kind of, not my body, but I got some grays and stuff coming on my little goatee. But inside, man, listen, there's been a metamorphosis of my soul and my spirit. I am not the same person, and what people know are their
Mm.
frame of reference, right?
Yeah.
So I think that somebody who is a part of the healing space has to learn how to meet people where they are, and that
Yeah.
doesn't mean better or worse. It's just be aware enough to say, okay, maybe this person can't have that kind of a conversation. Maybe this person can. But how do we meet them? And it can be taxing. So you're right. But I do think that with part of the healing process and the privilege, I use that word,
Mhm.
of even having the space to do that, right? I think it's okay to have to say, maybe I need to slow down and speed up a little bit to meet other people where they are. So I'm cool with that. I'll take that on my shoulders. I got wide shoulders. It's okay. A little bit of my ego coming out right there. But seriously, I'm serious though. I'm very serious,
Yeah.
man. I'm serious.
No. Yeah.
But that's why a lot of people don't like me, man,
You're
because I'm not
nailing it.
I'm not on anybody's side, man. I'm in the middle, man. Like, and it's okay. I've gotten some messages on my phone already. I'm sure some of them might not be all right.
I've been. I got Facebook over here, and I'm like, I'm not gonna look. I'm not gonna look.
Now I see them coming in. I see
I
them
see.
coming in, but I'm not really reading them. But it's just, honestly, it feels good to me because we've been talking how we first met.
Yep.
I've felt this way for so long, and it just feels good to get it out. And hopefully, somebody's recording it, and I hope that it's out there because it's just freeing to really dig deep and say how you really feel, man, and where you are. And I'm not stuck in this place. I want to talk to people. I want to
Yep.
interact with people. I want people to school me, to show me new things. I don't care what, if you're far left, if you're super up, if you're all the way down, if you're far right, or whatever, terms you guys like to put on yourselves. Come talk, man. Let's put it on the
Yeah.
table, and have fun in the process. Cause I do believe that we're here so we can laugh a little bit too. Levity is important.
It is.
Yeah, man. Yeah,
So I
bro.
guess the takeaway from this show,
Yeah,
uh, go go be uncomfortable. That's what I'm hearing,
for
right?
sure. Yes, sir.
Go
Yes, sir.
find a space that you're unfamiliar with.
Mhm.
Um, uh, go be uncomfortable and see what you have to learn. I think that's the ask from our time today that I'm hearing.
I'm all about that. I like how you wrap that up,
Yeah.
man. Call to action at the end. That's good. That's
I'm
business
I'm
school
I'm
stuff right there,
I'm,
baby.
I'm looking for an opportunity here. I'm also noting for us, we're going to have to find a way to keep the chat in front of us
Yeah,
because in the future, I do want to make sure that we're bringing in questions and
that's true.
comments
That's
and
true.
being able to have those conversations. I feel like it's going to add something to what we're doing here.
That's true.
Um,
We'll figure it out,
but
man. But it's
we,
been a
we
pleasure to
will.
even hold the space with you. It's been a pleasure, man. I appreciate it. I love you. Thank you for showing up. Thank you for everybody who chimed in. We got 20 people now, like 70 people liked it or something. So,
Yeah.
uh, yeah, and our plan is to have these type of conversations frequently and for it to be scheduled so people can chime in, and then also to integrate comments and other guests into the conversation and the dialogue as well. So, yeah, man.
Indeed.
Yes, sir.
Torian, I love you, my friend.
I love you,
Thank
my
you
brother.
so much.
Appreciate it. Yes.
Thank you,
All
brother.
right. All right, everybody. Peace.